Welcome to NTD Evening News. Our top story tonight, a tragedy in Vancouver last night during a lively street festival sends shockwaves through the public as Canadians prepare for elections. The nation's leader reacts to the attack that killed at least 11 people. A major explosion at an Iranian port. At least 40 people are dead, with many more injured. The explosion reportedly caused by the mishandling of chemicals used to make missile fuel. Massive changes under Trump's second term, even before he reaches 100 days back in office. Two guests join us to delve into the shakeups felt both at home and abroad, and what to expect next. Can a happy gut stave off dementia? NTD's Dawn Ma spoke with Brendon Fallon, host and executive producer of Epoch TV's Vital Signs, for details on how restoring good bacteria in the body could help. And scientists say they've spotted a brand new ultra-saturated color with the help of laser technology. The catch, only 5 people in the world have seen it so far.
This is NTD Evening News, live from our global headquarters in New York City.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A tragedy in Vancouver, Canada. 11 people were killed at a street festival last night after a driver charged through a street closed off for pedestrians. The tragedy took place at a community gathering to celebrate Filipino culture. Many were injured, and authorities warned more deaths could be announced. Festival goers held the suspect until police arrived. A 30-year-old local is in custody. The police chief said the suspect is known to police and has a history of mental illness. Reactions are now pouring in. The tragedy comes just before Canadians head to the polls for elections. From the campaign trail, candidates reacted to the tragedy. Prime Minister Mark Carney hopes to keep his seat in Monday's elections. He addressed the nation and labeled the attack a nightmare, but said there is no active threat to Canadians. Shortly after the U.S. and Iran began their third round of talks this weekend, a large explosion happened at a port in Iran. The explosion was reportedly caused by the mishandling of chemicals used to make missile fuel. NTD's Jason Perry has the details and a warning. This report contains footage that some viewers may find disturbing.
Black smoke poured into the sky from a port in Iran after a reported chemical explosion happened in the south of the country on Saturday. An Iranian official said at least 40 people were killed in the explosion, and the head of Iran's Red Crescent Society said about 1,000 people were injured. The windows of nearby offices were completely blown out from the blast. Outside of a building, a man was seen sitting on a curb with blood on his shirt, while a woman with blood on her hands went to use her phone. Another man wiped off the dust from the explosion. Even the cars in a nearby parking lot were damaged from the blast. A man who was injured recalled the moment.
The entire warehouse was filled with smoke, dust, and ashes. I don't remember if I went under the table or was thrown there by the blast.
And rescue operations continued throughout the night as flames continued to burn. Private security firm Ambry said the blast was caused by the mishandling of chemicals used to make missile fuel that were imported from China. However, a spokesperson for Iran's Ministry of Defense denied that missile fuel had been imported through that port. On Sunday, Iran's president visited some of those who were injured in the explosion and said this.
I should extend my condolences to the families of the loved ones who have passed away in this incident, and we will certainly try to take care of the families of those who lost their lives and ensure care for those dear ones who were injured.
This tragic explosion happened just after Iran and the U.S. began their third round of talks on a nuclear deal. The talks reportedly lasted for several hours, and Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said the talks were considerably more serious.
Let me be clear. We are only discussing issues related to nuclear power. We are not negotiating any other issues. Although when we say nuclear-related, we mean building trust in Iran's nuclear program in exchange for sanction removals.
The foreign minister of Oman, which mediated the talks, said in a post on X that the next round of talks will continue next week. The White House did not immediately comment on the recent talks. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said they would like to see Iran stop nuclear enrichment altogether and for them to import any enriched uranium needed for a civilian program. Jason Perry, NTD News.
And Justin, a strong message from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu today. He called for a nuclear deal between Washington and Tehran that would completely dismantle the country's nuclear program.
Once they have the weapons of delivery, ballistic missiles, ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, they will threaten every city in the United States. That is a palpable danger to Israel and to the free world, and it must be prevented. The way to prevent it is to dismantle all the infrastructure of Iran's nuclear program. That is a deal we could live with. Anything short of that could bring you the opposite result.
Netanyahu outlined 2 points for an Iran nuclear deal: dismantling the country's ability to enrich uranium and preventing it from developing ballistic missiles. He described that as, quote, a deal we could live with. Federal agents raided an underground nightclub in Colorado Springs on Sunday morning. A majority of the patrons arrested were in the country illegally. Agents from the Drug Enforcement Administration also found pink cocaine, guns, and patrons with active warrants. Some detainees were turned over to ICE. Not all patrons were detained. The illegal nightclub was under investigation for months. Members of the Tren de Aragua, MS-13, and Hells Angels gangs were attendees. A lead drug enforcement agent said drug trafficking, prostitution, and violent crimes occurred inside the club. Investigators also found active duty U.S. military members who worked at or attended the club and were involved in some of its alleged crimes. The Army Criminal Investigation Division is working with federal agents to determine next steps. It's been another fast-paced week for the Trump administration, from tariff battles and legal showdowns to major moves on energy and food safety policy. NTD's Daniel Monahan has the key takeaways.
Harvard sued the Trump administration this week, demanding an end to the freeze on federal funding. The legal action follows reports that President Trump planned to revoke another $1 billion from the university over its refusal to eliminate DEI programs, not banning masks at campus protests, and other alleged violations.
We expect all colleges and universities who are receiving taxpayer funds to abide by federal law.
Vice President J.D. Vance was in India this week, where he defended the administration's trade policies.
Now, critics have attacked my president, President Trump, for starting a trade war in an effort to bring back the jobs of the past, but nothing could be further from the truth.
Speaking of tariffs, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent praised U.S.-South Korea discussions as productive, saying they will be talking technical terms as early as next week.
South Koreans came early, they came with their A game, and we will see if they follow through on that.
Meanwhile, Senator Tommy Tuberville of Alabama says Trump's tariff policies are fueling a manufacturing boom in his state.
Businesses are scrambling to bring their manufacturing to the U.S.
Trump also discussed negotiations with China on tariffs.
Mr. President, has there been any direct contact between the U.S. and China on trade at all?
Yeah, of course.
And
every day.
But China's government denied any active negotiations were underway. New York Attorney General Letitia James and 11 other state attorneys general are suing the administration over tariffs they say have brought chaos to the American economy. New York Governor Kathy Hochul backs the lawsuit.
A tariff is nothing but a tax on everything you buy. What does that do? It makes everything more expensive.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio addressed talks to end the Russia-Ukraine conflict, saying the war is endable, but both sides just have to agree to it.
Of all the leaders in the world today, no leader is working harder to prevent wars or end them than President Trump is right now.
At home, President Trump met with a group of disabled veterans in the Oval Office.
Mr. President, we're very happy with the energy that this administration is bringing, and it's an administration that does what it promises, and so we're behind you. We believe in you.
There's no group of people more important than the people in this room, and I'm not talking about the media.
In commemoration of Financial Literacy Month, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent spoke with students around the country as part of Teach Children to Save Day.
A day dedicated to empowering young people with the skills they need to build strong financial futures.
Meanwhile, FDA Commissioner Marty McCary
announced the agency will begin phasing out petroleum-based synthetic food dyes.
For the last 50 years, American children have increasingly been living in a toxic soup of synthetic chemicals.
And on energy, Secretary of the Interior Doug Burgum says the U.S. will boost offshore oil production in the Gulf of America by over 100,000 barrels a day over the next decade. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
And President Trump's first 100 days coming up on Tuesday. NTD will have all-day coverage and analysis of his promises, progress, challenges, and a lot more on his second term. Don't miss it. Reports of another attack are coming out of Ukraine. Roughly 150 drones carried out an airstrike that killed at least 4 people and wounded others. Hours before that attack, Moscow claimed to have taken control over the final portions of the Kursk region. Ukraine had seized that territory last year. In a post on Truth Social yesterday, President Trump questioned whether Russia's Putin wants to end the Russia-Ukraine war, writing, quote, "Maybe he doesn't want to stop the war. He's just tapping me along and has to be dealt with differently." The post criticized Moscow for firing off lethal missile attacks into civilian areas in recent days. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff met with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow on Friday. Trump officials have presented Ukraine and Russia with options for a peace deal. They have not been made public. On the Ukraine side, President Trump had a 15-minute talk with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky about a potential ceasefire. The brief meeting happened just ahead of the funeral of Pope Francis yesterday. Zelensky called it a good meeting on social media. The White House called the discussion very productive and noted that more details would be released later. President Trump recently addressed what Washington has called ongoing active trade talks between the U.S. and China, but Beijing is dismissing his comments, calling them fake news. The president stood by his statement, reaffirming it once again Friday at the White House.
Has there been any direct contact between the U.S. and China for trade at all?
Yeah, of course.
And
every day.
President Trump said on Wednesday that the U.S. is now actively talking with China, sparking immediate reactions from Beijing. But one day later, Chinese officials from both the country's Commerce of Foreign Ministries denied the talks were happening. A Chinese foreign ministry spokesperson dismissed what it called fake news, saying, quote, "China and the U.S. had not held consultations or negotiations on the tariff issue, let alone reached an agreement." In an effort to target various issues like fentanyl flowing into the U.S., supply dumping, and unfair state-based subsidies, the U.S. imposed 145% tariffs on imports from China. An additional penalty could see tariffs on select goods hit 245%. That sparked Beijing to retaliate with its own 125% tariff on U.S. goods. The standoff is raising global concern.
I'm not going to say, I'm going to play hardball with China. But ultimately, they have to make a deal because otherwise they're not going to be able to deal in the United States. So
President Trump admitted that the 145% rate was too high for trade with China. A report from the Wall Street Journal suggests that the White House is considering lowering it to between 50% and 65%.
How soon do you want to bring the tariffs on Chinese goods?
Well, that depends on them.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent addressed the issue on Wednesday, explaining that the tariff rate depends on China's actions.
China in particular is in need of a rebalancing. Recent data shows the Chinese economy tilting even further away from consumption toward manufacturing. China can start by moving its economy away from export overcapacity and towards supporting its own consumers and domestic demand. Such a shift would help with global rebalancing that the world desperately needs.
He also offered advice to Beijing on resolving its economic troubles.
There is an opportunity for a big deal here, that the U.S. is looking to rebalance to more manufacturing. The identity of that would be less consumption. If China is serious on less dependence on export-led manufacturing growth and a rebalancing toward a domestic economy.
Meanwhile, China has held on to its hardline response, at least in the public eye. A Chinese spokesperson declared, quote, "If you want to fight, we will fight to the end." Despite that, reports show Chinese factories are slowing production and sending workers home. Analysts suggest the Chinese regime has made up its mind to play hardball with the Trump administration, and that from Beijing's perspective, in order to make a deal, Trump must make the first move to call Xi Jinping.
And I hope we can make a deal. Otherwise, we'll set a price, and hopefully they'll come here and they'll contribute. And if they don't, that's okay.
Earlier this afternoon, President Trump confirmed that the U.S. officials met with Chinese officials this morning, though he offered no further details.
Staying on the China beat, we'd like to give special mention tonight to Eva Fu, a reporter for the Epoch Times NTD sister media. Friday night, she was honored for her work in exposing the Chinese Communist Party's human rights abuses. Eva was selected by the Religion Communications Council to receive a 2025 Wilbur Award. It's for her investigative series titled Killing the Faithful for Organs, the brutal secret Beijing doesn't want exposed. The international award has been given annually since 1949 and is the organization's top honor. The Epoch Times journalist has devoted her reporting to religious freedom and human rights violations by the CCP. Her award-winning coverage highlights the regime's ongoing practice of forced organ harvesting from prisoners of conscience. Imprisoned members of the spiritual discipline Falun Gong are the primary victims. Eva told NTD News it's encouraging to see more recognition on this highly underreported issue. Coming up, massive changes under Trump's second term, even before he reaches 100 days back in office. Two guests join us to delve into the shakeups felt both at home and abroad and what to expect next. And can a happy gut stave off dementia? NTD's Don Ma spoke with Brendon Fallon, host and executive producer of Epoch TV's Vital Signs, for details on how restoring good bacteria in the body could help. That and more after this quick break.
At Mathis Home, we understand that your home is a reflection of you. And during our spring style event, we have fresh new looks that are waiting to make your home look and feel great at the lowest prices. And with all the latest styles in bloom, you'll find savings in every department. Whether it's a clean and modern sectional or a rustic and traditional dining table, we have it in stock with fast and free delivery. Come find the look that's right for you at our spring style event at your furniture superstore, Mathis Home.
Shen Yun Creations, the streaming platform from Shen Yun, featuring world-class dance, past programs, and all original music. Masterclasses, behind the scenes, comedy, and more. Explore shenyuncreations.com.
I'm Jonathan Lawson. If you're 50 to 85, I have an important message about security. Write down the number on your screen so you can call when I finish. The lock I want to talk to you about isn't the one on your door. This is a lock for your life insurance, a rate lock that guarantees that once you're insured, your rate can never go up at any time for any reason. But be careful. Many policies you see do not have one. But you can get a lifetime rate lock from Colonial Penn. Call this number to learn more. This plan was designed with a rate lock for people on a fixed income who want life insurance that fits their budget and is simple to get. Coverage options start at $9.95 a month, less than 35 cents a day. Act now, and your rate will be locked in for life. It will never increase, guaranteed. This is lifelong coverage that can never be canceled as long as you pay your premiums, guaranteed. And your acceptance is guaranteed, with no health questions. You cannot be turned down because of your health. Call for your information kit and read about this rate lock for yourself. You'll also get a free beneficiary planner. Both are free with no obligation. Don't miss out. Call for information, then decide. Read about the 30-day 100% money-back guarantee. Don't wait. Call this number now.
Call now and you'll also get this free beneficiary planner. Use this valuable guide to record important information and your final wishes, and it's yours free just for calling. So don't wait. Call 1-800-357-4821 for your free information. That's 1-800-357-4821. There's no risk or obligation. That number again is 1-800-357-4821. That's 1-800-357-4821. 1-800-357-4821. Call now.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. President Trump's second term has ushered in a whirlwind of changes not seen since FDR. What takes most presidents months, Trump has done in weeks, with shakeups felt both at home and abroad. Here to dig into the biggest changes since the first Trump administration and what we can expect going forward are two guests. Terry Schilling, president at American Principles Project, and Tim Dozier, executive director at Unleash Prosperity. Thank you both so much for being here. Terry, I want to start with you. It seems fair to say that Trump entered this administration more prepared than last term, but what would you say are the biggest differences when it comes to the first 100 days this time around versus 2017?
Well, thanks so much again for having me, Tiffany. I think with the 4 years off that President Trump had, it really gave him a lot of time to reassess what went right, what went wrong in the first administration, but mostly what went wrong with his team. If you look at the team that he's assembled right now, and I'm not just talking about the cabinet secretaries, I'm talking about all of the underlings and every bit of staff members that President Trump has, it's a much better and much more coherent and loyal team. There are much fewer leaks that are going on. This is a much more united administration, and that explains why they've had so much success within the first 100 days.
Very good point right there. And Tim, one of the biggest areas we're seeing changes on the daily are the markets. Those have been on a roller coaster since Trump 2.0 took office. Now, the economy was one of the top issues for voters in the 2024 election. But while Wall Street is panicking, what about Main Street?
Yeah, it's an amazing difference. And Terry mentioned the adjustments, the personnel. But think about this. We have a groundwork already laid. We have a foundation already laid. And I think that we've been building on that. Trade was a huge priority for Trump. It always was. Immigration was always, the border was always a huge priority for Trump. Tax cuts, that was always a huge priority. Regulatory reduction, always a huge priority for Trump since the very beginning. Except now, out of the gate, we are zooming because we are building on that foundation that was made. And look at the trade thing. So, he did a minor tariff, steel tariff on China in the first term. Now he comes out with Liberation Day, which was a huge shakeup to the entire global order of things. And we're not in favor of keeping those tariffs high at all. We think that that's a really bad thing for consumers. However, Trump is making good on his promise. He's making good on his promise to flatten that things out, low or no reciprocal tariffs, and making good with those things that he promised in his first term.
I mean, Trump always says promises made, promises kept. But Terry, as Tim pointed out, another big area is immigration. Since Trump 2.0, there has been a focus on deportations, but the current rate suggests that the administration will fall short of the 1 million annual goal. There have, of course, been a lot of actions in the courts that could play into why that number might not be as high as promised on the campaign trail. But a recent CBS YouGov poll shows that most approve of Trump on immigration, especially when it comes to deportations. How are you reading the immigration issue and how it will play out this term?
Well, as it's typical for President Trump, he's too successful. I think that the message has gotten clear on immigration. And so while he might not meet the 1 million deportations number, there will be over 1 million deportations had. They will just be self-deporting, because the biggest problem that we've had with this previous administration, with the Biden administration, is that there was lawlessness. There was no secure border. There was no real threat. The criminals and the alien gangs that have been coming here and setting up and fortifying, really, they weren't afraid of the law to be enforced. And President Trump is enforcing that law. So I think that while the official numbers might not be as high and they might not be able to reach that goal, there will be plenty of deportations. They'll just be getting the hint and leaving the country voluntarily.
Big changes there for sure. Tim, as you mentioned, one big area that seems to be the same is trade, particularly when it comes to China. We saw escalating tit-for-tat tariffs that became a trade war under the first Trump administration. Now, this time around, that has expanded to global tariffs, but with a focus on China, especially targeting unfair trade practices. How are you reading the trade element of Trump 1.0 versus 2.0 when it comes to China?
I mean, this is a line in the sand moment. Right now, this is make or break for President Trump. And the good news is that he's not going into this blind. He's not going into this dumb. He knows exactly where China stands internally economically. He knows how weak consumer spending is there. He knows the stimulus that's happening that she is pumping into his citizens. He knows that they're not spending. He knows that they're saving. Things are not going well in China right now economically. Things are not going well militarily. There is dissension within the upper ranks in the Chinese Communist Party right now. And so I think Trump is playing off that, saying, look, you know, we can afford this for now. I don't think you can. So come and make a deal. And by the way, the fact that they are, gleefully saying, oh, we're not making a deal. We're not making a deal. Well, can you really believe what China is saying? I'm going to go ahead and say, I'm going to trust President Trump before I trust the Chinese Communist Party.
Very good point. I want to expand on that. But first, Terry, on the domestic side, we see changes in terms of, say, DEI, unwinding what the previous administration did, changes in health with RFK Jr. at the helm. But abroad, there's been a shakeup with allies. You see Canada, Greenland, also the Panama Canal in the news a lot. Most of these, Trump has been citing national security grounds with a broader focus on stamping out the Chinese Communist Party infiltration and influence there. What do you see as the biggest shakeups at home and abroad this term around?
Well, I think President Trump has been incredibly successful, specifically and mostly regarding undoing all of the damage and destruction that the DEI initiatives have had on our country, but more specifically, the whole transgender industry. That's a $4.5 billion industry that managed to basically take over civil rights law and subvert it. And it's why we've been having boys and girls sports and why little kids in America are getting sterilized with cross-sex hormones and puberty blockers. It's absolutely atrocious. But President Trump is putting an end to the government promotion of the transgender industry. And for that, I think most Americans are very, very thankful for him just bringing some sanity to the entire nonsense of these democratic constructed gender wars that they've created.
And Tim, back to the world's two biggest economies, President Trump has been saying that China needs us more than we need them. So what could that mean in terms of negotiations? What would a trade deal look like?
Well, look, I mean, that's the problem with a communist party. That really is, because they control it. It's all happening in Beijing, and there is very little transparency going on. But again, we are not in the Cold War. We have the internet. We know reports inside. There are journalists inside that are telling us what's happening. We can see what's happening through people who have moved out, through businesses that have moved out, through the reports of stealing IP. The things in China, they're not really producing anything. They steal, and then they build on that. And so they are at a deficit already. And I know that we say that, it's the two largest economies, but we still are the alpha dog economy in this world. I mean, China is still far smaller than we are. And so we do have a little bit more muscle to flex. We have to keep that in mind. We don't want to elevate China to a more superpower status than they actually are. I'm going to be very, very clear about that. We are the alpha dog economy. People want to do business with the United States of America. We just haven't had a leader that's actually framed it that way since President Trump took office. And so I want to focus more on the strength of America, always betting on America, especially over the Chinese Communist Party. So I think that we're going to see, as we go down the road here with negotiations, China's going to be broken, or they're just going to get smart and they're going to make a deal, because we can work with them. I do believe that.
Very good point. You're seeing that play out in terms of the reports on negotiations where the White House is telling other countries either to cut trade with China or, not get a good deal with the U.S. But Terry, in terms of what Trump's been doing, critics are saying that within these first 100 days, Trump has destabilized the country and alienated friends. Supporters say something of this scale is needed to shake things up and break from the malaise, noting nothing short of global reset would achieve the promises Trump made on the campaign trail. How are you reading this? Is this chaos or part of the art of the deal?
Look, I've read a lot of American history and world history. This is nothing compared to many other times in American history. But I will tell you this, Tiffany, it is rich. coming from Democrats to hear about the upsetting of norms and turning America upside down in our judicial system after they weaponized every level of government against President Trump from before he was even president. They had the FBI spying on him in his campaign, and the lawfare and the weaponization of the deep state against him never stopped. Right? So if anyone's responsible for upsetting the norms of American society, the Democrats would do themselves a big favor by looking into the mirror.
And Tim, same question, but more on the economic angle. Is this total chaos, especially on the markets, or is it part of the art of the deal negotiations?
When you upset the global order pretty much as it has stood for decades, you're going to see chaos. You will see chaos. There's no doubt about it. And by the way, if these tariffs don't come down, and I'm not just talking about the China tariffs, I'm talking about all the tariffs that have been levied. If they don't come down, yeah, there will be chaos in this market because there is a good size of our economy that's based on trade, and it will take time to move production back into America. And by the way, I want to point this out. Don't bury your head in the sand. When things come back to America, they will be robots that are doing these manufacturing jobs. It's cheaper, it's more efficient, and the technology is there. And so we can't bury our heads in the sand and say, hey, Ohio and Michigan are going to be like they were in the 60s. That's moving backwards. We're going to move forwards. We are going to find positions. We're going to innovate, and we're going to make this place, again, like I said, bet on America. So when you say chaos, it may look like that at this point because there is a bit of chaos. But at this point, I think that we have the ingenuity, innovation. Look at Elon Musk. Look what he's doing. With those people leading this country, I do think that we're going to have a great shot to get out of this temporary chaos.
A fascinating discussion for sure. Terry Schilling, Tim Dozier, thank you both so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, can a happy gut stave off dementia? NTD's Don Ma spoke with Brendon Fallon, host and executive producer of Epoch TV's Vital Signs, for details on how restoring good bacteria in the body could help. And scientists say they've spotted a brand new ultra-saturated color with the help of laser technology. The catch, only 5 people in the world have seen it so far. That and more still to come here on NTD News.
I didn't ask to lose my mother or to be abused at 5 years old. I didn't ask to be kicked out of my house with nowhere to go. I just can't. I'm so sorry. I didn't ask for any of this. But I did ask for help, and Covenant House was there. Thanks to their love and support, and to generous people like you, I got what I needed to take control of my life.
For the young people who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations, Covenant House is there providing safety, hope, and a brighter future. Call or go online now. For a gift of only $19 a month, just 63 cents a day, you can provide hot meals, safe shelter, medical care, and love to more than 2,000 young people who sleep at a Covenant House every night. 1 in 10 young adults will experience homelessness this year. Your gift can help reach them when they need it most.
I didn't ask for my parents and my family to disown me. I didn't ask to end up in a homeless shelter. The beauty of it all is that I found Covenant House.
The need is overwhelming, but your monthly support will make sure no young person is ever turned away. Call or go online right now to safeplacetosleep.org with your gift of just $19 a month. With your monthly donation, you'll receive this soft, comforting blanket as a reminder of the warmth and safety your gift will provide a young person tonight.
Covenant House really helped me and really helped mold me into the woman I am today. If there's no Covenant House, where would I be today?
Your monthly gift is urgently needed to reach young people in communities like yours who didn't ask to be put in unthinkable situations. Show them they're loved and not alone. Call the number on your screen or go online to safeplacetosleep.org.
Where did the time go? Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. How did I get here?
the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A saying from Latin suggests that a healthy body can sustain a healthy mind. But what does that really mean for our overall health when more than 6 million Americans suffer from dementia? NTD's Don Ma spoke earlier with Brendon Fallon, host and executive producer of Epoch TV's Vital Signs Health program, for more.
So what do you have for us this time?
Yeah, Don, these colonies of protozoa, fungi, bacteria that dwell within us, it's always spurred on my imagination. And I spoke to a doctor who was actually a cardiologist, 25 years, and when he started to see the tremendous improvements in heart health from people improving their gut health, he really started to focus on that side of health. And increasingly, dementia, Alzheimer's dementia is being looked at as a metabolic condition. And that's what I asked him about first. How could gut health influence a condition like dementia? And he answers that in terms of a condition called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And here he is explaining what that is.
Well, dementia is a work in progress, but there are several clear-cut culprits in causing dementia. One is this. So many of us have been overexposed to antibiotics and things that have disruptive effects on the gastrointestinal microbiome, like glyphosate, the herbicide Roundup, or stomach acid blocking drugs, or non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, or chlorinated drinking water, or preservatives in food, and many other things have disrupted the gastrointestinal microbiome. Net result, we've lost literally hundreds of beneficial species in the colon. When that happens, it allows the overproliferation of fecal microbes. These are microbes like E. coli, Salmonella, Campylobacter, which might ring familiar because they're also the microbes of food poisoning. When that kid flipping burgers at the fast food joint touches your food after not washing his hands after using the bathroom, you can get food poisoning from the same microbes. Point being, fecal microbes are not well tolerated outside of the colon, the most distal 4 to 5 feet of your gastrointestinal tract. So loss of many beneficial species in the colon, this has allowed the overproliferation of those fecal microbes that now have ascended into the 24 feet of small intestine in 1 out of 2 every American. So we're talking about 150 to 160 million plus people have this very peculiar issue of, we call it small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, fecal microbes proliferating in the small intestine. When they do that, the small intestine is poorly equipped to manage fecal microbes, trillions of them. They only live for a few hours. So there's enormous, rapid turnover of fecal microbes in the 24 feet of small intestine. They die, and they release their toxic compounds, such as endotoxin, that enters the bloodstream. Because that small intestine, very poorly protected, is also very permeable. That's where we absorb nutrients, like vitamins and minerals. So this endotoxin penetrates into the bloodstream. That's called endotoxemia. And we now know with good evidence, it's the driving factor in hundreds of health conditions. And one of the effects is that it inflames the brain. It causes so-called type 3 diabetes or insulin resistance in the brain, and is all highly toxic to the brain. It actually causes atrophy of various brain parts of your brain, like the hippocampus, one of the major parts of the brain affected with dementia.
So in the beginning there, he actually mentioned antibiotics. I'm just wondering, it's a very common medication, right? What is the impact on gut health when you ingest antibiotics?
Well, he's talking about it as something that can wipe out beneficial gut bacteria species. And his message is not, we shouldn't take antibiotics. He really emphasizes there are certain situations where antibiotics are needed, but people should realize that they do have this effect. And it's quite a common practice for a newborn baby might go through a series of different antibiotics, and it's not really considered as much as it should be, this effect that they can have.
Yeah, and it takes a while for the bacteria in your gut to replenish, right? It takes a bit.
It does, and it won't. If a species is lost, it's not necessarily going to come back. A lot of times, people are told by their doctors just take some yogurt, and that this will replenish it. But here, Dr. Davis is talking about one specific bacteria, beneficial bacteria, that can counter this fecal overgrowth from the small intestine.
Is this caused by the gut not ridding itself of fecal matter to the degree that it's supposed to? Is that the reason behind this?
No, it's more due to the loss of beneficial microbes that were suppressing the ascendance of those fecal microbes from the colon. So, for instance, there are species like one of my favorite microbes, Lactobacillus reuteri, Reuteri, named after the German microbiologist who discovered this interesting microbe in a breastfeeding German woman in 1962. In his 40-year academic career, at the beginning, he could find this in breast milk, stool, other places. As his career carried on, he couldn't find it anymore. And that has proven true in other studies. We've lost this very important species, Lactobacillus reuteri, and other species like Lactobacillus gasseri. Why is that important? Because these are species that are unique in that they colonize the small intestine. That's where this ascending infestation of fecal microbes occurs. So we've lost microbes that colonize the small intestine, and we've lost microbes that produce what are called bacteriocins. These are natural antibiotics effective in killing fecal microbes.
So Brandon, can you just talk real quick a little bit more about how to replenish some of these important bacteria?
Yeah, hope is not lost, Don. There are options out there. You can purchase probiotics to replenish, like L. reuteri that Dr. Davis is talking about there. And he has actually developed a way of gauging how effective you're being at eliminating SIBO, the small intestinal bacterial overgrowth that's connected to so many different diseases. And in that, we discuss this in our full interview on Vital Signs on Epoch TV.
For more details, check out NTD's Vital Signs with Brendon Fallon. The program zooms in on health and wellness in everyday life, connecting the dots for the big picture of our composite health. Find it on epochtv.com by clicking the Talk Shows tab. Next, whether you're headed to the airport for a vacation or traveling for work, a reminder for airline passengers. Starting May 7th, all travelers will need a real ID to board even domestic flights or another document that fits the real ID standard. Those include passports, military IDs, and permanent resident cards. The Real ID law was originally passed by Congress back in 2005, but after 20 years of debate between state lawmakers in Washington, the deadline to raise the security standard has arrived. The White House says there will be no exceptions. That's after state senators in Kentucky have already requested an extension. TSA data shows that right now, just under 20% of Americans don't have a Real ID compliant document. The agency says that passengers without one can, quote, expect to face delays, additional screening, and the possibility of not being permitted into the security checkpoint. Coming up, scientists say they've spotted a brand new ultra-saturated color with the help of laser technology. The catch, only 5 people in the world have seen it so far. And a ranch dog hailed a hero after rescuing a 2-year-old in the Arizonian wilderness. How he's honored for his vital role in the rescue, that and more after the break.
I go by Jackie. I'm 44 years old. I had 3 kids at the time and single mother. I was working 60 hours a week, still couldn't pay the bills. Skipped meals so that they could eat. It's been hard because one thing falls into place, 10 things fall out of place. You know, I just can't do this alone and make it work.
1 in 5 children face hunger in America, and food costs are rising. But everyone needs nourishing food to thrive, and they can when we work together so our neighbors can feed their families. Call or go online right now to join Feeding America with your gift of just $19 a month, only 63 cents a day. Together, thanks to a nationwide network of food banks, dedicated volunteers, and the monthly support of people like you, we can fill plates with nutritious food for families across America.
One day my mother came over to my house and said, "There's a meeting at the pantry." I said, "Okay." And I went. There were some ladies in there. They were from the food bank. They asked several questions. Some of those were about me and my story, but it helped me to open up a little bit.
We're getting closer to the day when no one in America faces hunger, but we can't do it without you. Call or go online now. Visit helpfeedingamerica.org and give $19 a month, just 63 cents a day. 98% of donations go directly to help millions of people facing hunger, from coast to coast and in your own community. And when you give by credit card, we'll send you this exclusive canvas grocery bag to show you are a part of a movement of supporters working together to help end hunger.
I have people that I can trust. I have hope.
Please call now or make your monthly donation at helpfeedingamerica.org, and your gift can double in impact.
Baby, you see, you're so right for me, and I'm right for you. I love the things you do, like sweet tasting wine. Your lips are so divine. Your loving turns me on. My lonely days are gone. That's why I'm never gonna let you go. Never gonna let you go. Babe, I'm never gonna let you go. No, no, never gonna let you go. Baby, never gonna let you go. Never gonna let you go. Babe, I'm never
Here you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome back. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Move over, Roy G. Biv. The spectrum of rainbow colors we can see may have just gotten bigger. Scientists say they just discovered a brand new color, but only 5 people in the world have seen it so far. Here's the latest.
The color is called Olo, and it's described as a blue-green of unprecedented saturation. The discovery was published in the journal Science Advances earlier this month. But seeing the vibrant hue requires some help from technology. The human eye has 3 different kinds of special cells called cones, which allow us to see colors. Each of them detects a different range of colors, red, green, and blue, with a little overlap in between. But researchers wondered what would happen if they used a laser to stimulate just one type of cone cell at a time, with no overlap. The result? 5 people, including one person from the research team, saw Olo. Ren Ang, an electrical engineer at the University of California, co-authored the study and participated in it. He described it as jaw-dropping and more saturated than any color that you can see in the real world. For those hoping to catch a glimpse without the experiment, this shade of teal is the closest comparison. But researchers say it doesn't represent the true color. Because of that, some scientists aren't buying it, simply calling it a more saturated version of the green we already see. But others suggest the research could help people with certain kinds of color blindness in the future.
A special gift from France to New Jersey, given in 1949 to thank America for World War II help, is coming back home. That's after it was lost for decades. The gift is known as a Mercy train boxcar. It's one of 49, one for each U.S. state at the time. New Jersey's boxcar was built in France between around 1895 and was used in World War I to carry soldiers or horses. It disappeared in 1958 and was thought to be gone forever. But in 1993, a worn-out train boxcar was found in a Tennessee field and moved to a museum warehouse in Kansas City, Missouri. It sat there until last year when museum workers discovered and identified it. Over the next 2 years, New Jersey's United Railroad Historical Society plans to restore the historic find. Absolutely fabulous is how some audience members described Shen Yun performing arts in upstate New York after a recent performance. The New York-based classical dance company is world-renowned for its revival of traditional Chinese culture from before communism. Representative Elise Stefanik presented a certificate of recognition to the Upstate New York Falun Dafa Association, the organizer of Shen Yun's performance there. NTD is a proud media sponsor of Shen Yun. Take a look.
I can't wait for next year's performance because I just heard that it's different every year. So, and it's not the same as watching it on TV or going to a movie. This is the whole experience with the music and the costumes. Absolutely fabulous.
Very spiritual experience, not only enjoying the art and entertainment and professionalism, but it brings you some level of peace and comfort.
I would give 10 out of 10. I mean, it was amazing. The dressing, costume, dancing. I loved everything.
Since 2006, Shen Yun has toured the world with a mission to revive 5,000 years of divinely inspired traditional Chinese culture, bringing ancient wisdom and values to life on stage. But the company cannot perform in China because Shen Yun's performance shines a light on the brutal persecution of faith by the Chinese Communist Party.
It teaches us the importance of freedom and fighting for that freedom, and knowing an artist can express themselves prior to communism, and now not having that freedom, it's suffocating to even watch it.
Everything is magnificent. It works on so many levels. The music, I thought, was great. The athleticism, the coordination of the animation with the actual performers was amazing. And the moral message as well.
The messages behind the stories I thought were very beautiful. It just added to the beautiful costumes and all of the colorful, intricate steps and the acrobatics that the dancers performed tonight.
Shen Yun will be performing at the Brendon Center for the Performing Arts in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania on April 26th and 27th. NTD News, Albany, New York.
One of the planet's rarest trees, a prehistoric species once eaten by dinosaurs, is producing fruit in one garden in the UK. A rare tree called the Wollemi pine, which existed 90 million years ago, was thought extinct until found in Australia in 1994. A retired couple, Pamela and Alistair Thompson, planted an 18-inch sapling in their garden in Malvern, England in 2010. Now the 13-foot tall tree has produced fruit for the first time. The couple hopes its seeds can grow more of the endangered trees. They will open their garden to the public on May 4th for those who want to visit in person. An exhibition celebrating an 800-year-old poem has opened at the National Gallery of Umbria in central Italy. The 13th century friar was the inspiration behind the name of the late Pope Francis. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the details.
St. Francis of Assisi still inspires. His 8th-century-old work, The Canticle of Creatures, is the foundation for this new exhibition at the National Gallery of Umbria. Written in the 11th century, the poem is considered one of the first to focus on the relationship between man and nature. Titled Brother, Sun, Sister, Moon, the exhibition includes artworks which reflect that theme.
Francis, for the first time, let's say, introduced the idea of you to creation. And so it happens also in sculpture and paintings, in which the gaze of artists, precisely in that era, becomes much more attentive, much more concentrated, even with extraordinarily realistic works.
The exhibition displays 80 artworks borrowed from the most prestigious European art museums. The Louvre in France and the Vatican museums have contributed. There are also paintings by other artists who were fascinated by the theories of St. Francis.
The moment when Francis composed the Canticle of the Creatures and is matched and married to a truly epical cultural and social transformation, which is what happens between the 13th and 14th centuries, 12th and 13th centuries, when we stop looking to the supernatural, when people stop looking to heaven as the only desirable dimension, and turn their gaze back to what is around us.
Today, St. Francis's message is still shared by the members of the Franciscan community who embrace a humble lifestyle and reject material wealth. Friar Julius Cesario, communication director for the religious community in Assisi, explains his impact.
One of the great consequences of the Franciscan view of nature is the development of modern science as we know it today. And then, in the church, certainly Francis left this more contemplative dimension instead, meaning that man's life is not only exploiting the world but also sharing it, right? Because the whole canticle is this fact that it's always for us. It's never just for me.
Brother Sun Sister Moon runs until June 15th, 2025 at the National Gallery of Umbria. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
A local dog turned hero after rescuing a 2-year-old boy in the Arizona wilderness. Now gifts arrive at his doorstep daily. Meet Buford, a 6-year-old Anatolian Pyrenees who lives with his owner, Scotty Dutton, and patrols the land to ward off coyotes. But that all changed when a toddler wandered away from home and got lost. On April 14th, the Allens reported their 2-year-old missing. His mother telling local media it wasn't unusual for him to play outdoors, but when she couldn't find him, she and her husband feared the worst. A search and rescue party made up of 40 members looked for the toddler. During the overnight search, a rescue helicopter spotted 2 mountain lions in the area the boy had wandered into. That's when hero dog Buford found the boy asleep under a tree and brought him to his master's ranch. Dutton told local media he was headed to town when he noticed Buford in his driveway with the missing boy. Since then, Buford has been hailed a hero. The sheriff's office awarded him a certificate and vest, saying his actions exemplify the highest standards of community service and canine heroism. And gifts for the good boy keep arriving every day. That's all for today's news. For round-the-clock coverage, visit us at ntd.com/live or download our NTD app. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Good night.